afternoon, and welcome to another live edition of Wealth Building Wednesday. Wealth Building Wednesday is brought to you by TRHT Selma. TRHT stands for Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. We are all about on Wealth Building Wednesday spending 30 good minutes. Sometimes it's a little bit more, but at least 30 good minutes putting the information where the goats can get it. And we always have amazing guests. And today is just not just like any other show, because we have a phenomenal author, philanthropist, artist, a woman who is truly making waves and changing how we relate to our money. Miss Jessica Norwood, founder of Runway. Welcome to Wealth Building Wednesday.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Yes, I am as well. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join little old me and the little old Selma, Alabama. Listen, and to really talk about some critical issues to our community. You are an author. I did mention that, y'all. If you have not picked up this book, wait a minute, let me get my notes out the front. Look. If you have not picked up her book, then you are missing out on a treat. It is not only informative from the perspective of how we need to reimagine our relationship with money, and our community's relationship with money, but it is informative if you are unaware of some of the historical challenges, right? Because it's not just me, right? You're not the only person, sis, bruh. You are not the only one. There are many, many, many of us who have struggled economically in this country. And it is important for us to notate that, right? And you've done an excellent job at doing that in your book, Believe in You Money. So thank you for yes, putting your thoughts on paper. Want to ask, because one of the things that we initially, and literally why this podcast was started, was related to this racial wealth gap. The fact is that Black folks and Black families experience much less wealth than white families in America. And so when we think about this thing called a racial wealth gap in our country, how has that wealth gap impacted Black families from your perspective in our communities?
Yeah, first, let me just say again, thank you so much for having me. And Selma is a mighty, mighty touch point and spiritual nexus for everybody in the United States who is thinking about powerful organizing. And I've been coming to Selma since I was a little girl. I, went to 21st century camps and, became fast friends with a lot of really incredible people in the area that do powerfully important work that vibrates beyond just the geography of Selma, but all across the world. And so I just feel really deeply honored to be able to bring some more perspective to the wealth building conversation alongside of the truth and reconciliation work, alongside of the great voter engagement work, and so on that comes from and out of the people from the Black Belt. So thank you. I'm from Mobile, Alabama, originally, for folks who are just checking in and trying to figure out, well, how she know all of this stuff? I'm from Mobile. Actually, I'm from Pritchard, Alabama. So if you really know Mobile, if you really know that area, then you know I'm from Pritchard. And Pritchard is very much like a Selma. It is a smaller community next to a larger city. It is majority at this point African American. It wasn't always that way. And the median income average is around $15,000, $16,000. So highly impoverished area as well. And I'm like a lot of you wondering, how does an area like this, grow and advance economically? Because I know a lot of talented people from my community, just like you are all, talented artists and communicators and writers and all kinds of different talents, mathematicians coming from our communities. But where's the pathway for opportunity and particularly for investment. And so that is how I got started in thinking of these conversations. And I entered it thinking about it from the racial wealth gap. When I started my work at Runway about 8 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
I started because there was this data point that everybody kept talking about called the racial wealth gap. And at that
Mm-hmm.
time, the racial wealth gap said something like white wealth. So majority white folks is Jeff Bezos and all of the rich folks that you can imagine, and the Elons, everybody in there, that on average they had about $144,000 in wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And that meant from the highest of the highs, and then also to our cousins that don't have a lot of money in there as well, $144,000. And black wealth, and this is with everybody who you know who could be really wealthy, the best basketball players and all of the people who got money on with black money, down to our cousins who may not have much. Um, that wealth was about $10,000. So we
Mm-hmm.
have $144,000 to $10,000 in wealth. And when we talk about wealth, we're talking about the income that you make from your job. We're talking about equity that you may have in real estate, like your home or other real estate ventures. We're talking about your access to stocks and other kinds of shares that you may have in a company that gives you some kind of wealth. And we're also talking about entrepreneurship, right? We're talking about, well, does your business have equity? Does your business have a value? Do you have other money coming from your business pursuits?
Mm-hmm.
And when we average all of those things out, right, your income, what you have from your from where you built wealth from real estate, what you have invested, your insurance policies and things like that, and your business, that's how you get that number,
Okay.
right? That's how you get that number. So there was something inside of that one where 144 to 10 is incredible. And here's the other data set. They at that time, and this is still true, at that time though, 8 years ago, the information was that $144,000 for wealth for whites, $10,000 for wealth for black people, and that it would take 238 years to catch up. 238 years to catch up, only if white wealth stopped moving.
Right.
That was a sobering data point for me. And the reason that is because wealth isn't stagnant. Wealth continues to move. So you're trying to catch a speeding train at this point,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when we talk about the racial wealth gap, we're talking about the wealth that's accumulated through the ways that I have said. And we're saying that wealth begets wealth. So a little more wealth adds a little more wealth and a little more wealth and a little more wealth. And because of that, it would take 238 years only if white wealth stopped growing. It just froze in time. How does that affect our community? This is what your core point was. But I wanted to set it up because if you didn't know what wealth gap meant, I want to give you some information about what that means. All right. How does this affect our community? Well, $10,000 to 144,000, and you won't catch it. You won't catch up. In fact, the number is declining. It was 10,000 when I started. It was, it's slipping down to $8,000. It will hit zero. What happens when we hit zero wealth? I think they're expecting maybe 15 more years now. It could be accelerated with all that's going on in our economy, but 15 more years, you're at zero. We don't have to look very far to know what happens when you have zero money, zero wealth.
Right.
You are vulnerable to predators, relationship predators, people who in housing who be predators. You're vulnerable. You can't withstand if something goes wrong, whether it's on the car, whether it's your health, we lose a job. You have no cushion and no ability to navigate life.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, that number signals the fact that your community does not have the resources to really go on. What happens to your culture? What
Right.
happens to your buildings and your places and the places that make you feel safe? What happens to those things? You don't have that because there's no availability of investment even coming in. That number, that 10,000 to 144 signals that those things get built and they continue to grow and grow and grow because people have found it that it's okay to exclude Black communities from real economic opportunity. And that has been the case since, you know, Black folks have really, you know, been in this country uh, um, since the founding of this country.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pervasive issue and it creates a level of instability, vulnerability for our people and for our communities. And more than that, I think what it also does, and the part that's most heartbreaking to me, is it signals that you aren't valuable, that your contributions
Yeah.
and your intellect aren't needed for our success. And what happens to a people when you constantly make them believe that they have nothing to contribute and that they are not valuable or worthy of an investment? Yeah.
So, in even contemplating that, and just when we think about, there's always this pushback of, not always, but there are sometimes
Yeah.
we hear people push back with the idea of Black Lives Matter, right? We hear people say all lives matter. Well, why don't you stop shooting and harming yourselves in your own communities? Um, let's think about the impact
Yeah.
that being told that you are nothing, like literally systems
Yeah.
that are designed to hinder the
Yeah.
progress of a particular group of people,
Yeah.
right? Let's think about the impact that that has generationally and the trauma that has been carried by mothers and offered to
Mhm.
their children in their wombs
Right.
that have not recovered from the trauma that then have other children generationally that carry all of this trauma and thus make choices because we are vastly disconnected actually from who we come from, right? There's this narrative that Black folks, we were enslaved here and you should just be glad that you're here. And it's like, well, no, we built the country. Thank you very much.
Right.
um and there is a need for reparative investment
Yeah.
because of all of the things that have happened to Black folks along the way. And so I want to just ask you about what equitable investment looks like, because when you talk about the wealth gap increasing, literally, even though folks are saying, well, during COVID, there were businesses. Do you like literally 43 to 1 when it comes to Black businesses that closed down to
Yeah.
one white business during COVID?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
regardless of what, the PPP loans and all these other things that were put into place, the wealth gap persists at an alarming rate.
Yeah. Yeah.
What does it look like to have equitable investment
Yeah.
in our community?
Yeah. I think the figures you just gave and shared about the closures and COVID just take me back to that moment. And one thing that I do for folks who are new to me, and I didn't get a chance to do my full intros of things, but I invest in Black businesses and businesses of color and businesses that have been historically marginalized and excluded from financial access.
Mhm.
I support businesses that support Black communities as well. So you don't have to be Black, but you got to love Blackness. You got to love Black people to get into our fund. And we have a $50 million reparative fund. And so that kind of speaks a little bit to what I'm going to talk about what it means to do something equitably. But Here's an example that I want to give that takes me back to COVID, because at that time I had a portfolio of about 50 businesses at the time between Oakland and Boston. And I knew that that my businesses already did not have a strong relationship to the financial systems and institutions. So their ability to pivot and to recover in this kind of climate with COVID was not going to really be possible.
Right.
And so I called some of my friends and investors and my team members, and all of us got together and we decided that we would do something that had never been done before. I actually called my friend Aisha in Jackson, Mississippi, who runs Springboard. I can't remember the Springboard something like, but they have the
Mhm.
Magnolia's Mothers Trust. If folks want to,
Yes.
and I called Aisha and I said,
Guaranteed income.
download everything you can to tell me about universal basic income payment. And she shared about how they did theirs, and we kind of co-created something on the fly, and we called our investors and we said we need more money, and
Okay.
here's what we're going to do. We're going to send payments to our investments. And so instead of you trying to figure out how you pay me, I'm paying you right now.
Wow.
And we created the first universal basic income payment for our portfolio of businesses. So about 40 or so businesses, I don't remember if it's 40 or 50 or so businesses at the time, got a direct payment of $1,000 a month from me for 6 months. And we also renegotiated all of their loans and applied for PPP and got everything that we could for everybody. We gave them coaching on from high level marketing, professionals to help them pivot their businesses if they were more brick and mortar and needed to obviously go online at that point.
Mhm.
And I'm excited because all of our businesses stayed open. And not only that, they did grow, but it was because we were looking for this equitable solution. We knew that what our businesses needed was cash. A lot of folks at that particular time were trying to give out loans during,
Mhm.
so instead of just saying, here's the money, go ahead and be great and succeed and take care of whatever you need. This wasn't a grant. You didn't have to report to me or do anything specific. You didn't have to even apply. I called them and said, this is what we're going to do. And you can use it, buy groceries, pay for a sitter, get masks, pay for your business, whatever you want to do. I don't care. I don't care about that. And it was surprising to me when I talked to other financial institutions and providers like myself, their response was to try to create a loan product when nobody needed more debt. They just needed good old cash to make it through.
Right.
And so to me, that's equity. It's knowing the history, knowing the circumstances, knowing the culture, and creating a solution or a response that honors all of those things. When I'm talking about Believing You Money, which is the name of the book is called Believing You Money, what would it look like if the economy loved Black people? I'm talking about long-term money. I'm talking about money that is directly anti-racist, and that's not something that people often want to say because folks like to skirt around everything and don't want to name something. But I
Mhm.
think it's important for people to acknowledge that there has been a pervasiveness that has been anti-Black, and you have to be more than just I'm not racist. You have to actively dismantle the ways where racism shows up in these systems.
Right.
And so it looks like long term, it looks like being anti-racist, it looks like non-extractive terms, it looks like making sure that you're not trying to take over somebody's business or displace them or harm them in a way that moves them out of the track of building wealth. You want to keep them on the wealth building road. You don't want to take them out. And
Right.
so and then the book obviously lays out a lot more, 6 other principles that really matter for us to consider around how we're doing this in a way that's believing you money, but really equity based. Like we have to talk about moving from this idea of going alone and go back to what is really our cultural way, which is a lot more community and a lot more collective. We have to really talk about moving from transactional relationships into ones that are more transformative, not just for the people who are borrowing, but what changed in me.
Yeah.
Because I dismantled these questions and issues about power that I was holding. Because all of a sudden, because I had money, now I started acting funny and doing something and
Mm.
creating hoops for people to jump through because I had the money. When if I look at this, how am I undoing that power dynamic inside of this? These are the kinds of things that I think make a movement of money reparative, equitable, and give us closer to addressing the systemic issues that happen in the racial wealth gap that create something like that.
So now I want to, and before we went live, we were having this conversation, right? And so I met you, I think it was earlier this year.
I would say it was like, was it
Was it?
April?
Well, I was about to say it was really, really early in the
It
year.
was like April or something like that. Yeah.
Yes, you were in Montgomery, and I had the opportunity to sit at a table with you and other like-minded women. And when I tell you, I have been inspired ever since. And one of the things that I heard that really resonated in my spirit was the gifting of rest. You asked us each to go around, um,
Yeah.
and one of the sisters at the table said, "Gifting rest." And for me, that feels like, and even as I reflect in the words of your book, you describe the situation of your mom being a techie, right, and not having the fundamental investment,
Yeah.
right, the access to investment capital that so many of us just simply don't have, and the idea of this bootstrapping. Um, and gifting my son rest would
Mhm.
be an amazing, like, I would feel like, in addition to hearing God the Father say, "Job well done,"
Yeah.
I want to be able to gift my son rest. The ability to, if he needs to take a beat, like if at
Yeah.
any point something happens and he needs to grieve or work through a situation in a way that he has a moment to do that. And all too often, we don't have that as Black folks. We got to suppress whatever emotions. We've been taught to do that,
That's right.
right? I'm literally in a process in my 40s of unlearning how I've been taught to suppress
Yeah.
emotions, to not want to talk things through, to push through.
To push through.
Especially Black women, honey. Listen, I was on a meeting yesterday. This man said, "We know y'all got your capes on," talking to two Black women. I said, and he was a Black man, so it wasn't quite as offensive. But I said, "Hold up, put a pin in that thought. I am looking to retire my cape."
That's
Okay,
right. That's
look,
right.
yes. Look, so when we think about those things and position it in the idea of equitable investment, when we think about believe in you money, which is money that says, "I see you,
See you. Yeah.
like I see that you are prosperous, that you are brilliant, that you are beautiful, and that you are doing your best."
Yeah.
How could that literally, like, let's say in the next 5 years we were able to get there,
Mm.
what would the difference be in being able to live in a nation, in a world where Black folks, where the money we agreed with each other. Look.
Oh my goodness. Right?
Yes.
Come on, sis. Yeah, I hear you. You know what? I think about the American dream, right? We've heard this before where you can come from not much and with hard work and stick to itness and ingenuity, you can create a business
Mhm.
and grow that business into whatever shape and size you need it to be, um, to take care of yourself and your family and the obligations that you have in the world. And so many people really pursue that and believe in that, come from other countries inside of this country who grow up and
Mhm.
are looking for that as an opportunity to maybe pull them out of the circumstances that they may have grown up in. It can be a real game changer, a business can be, and getting out there and using your own wit and so forth. And I think about that American dream, and I think about this other piece. Langston Hughes has this poem, The Dream Deferred.
Mm-hmm.
This is what happens to a dream deferred. Does it shrivel up and die on a vine? And I think about what happens when that dream is deferred. What happens to our communities? What happens to our heart and our spirit? What happens to that little light inside of you that is believing and trying and shining? And so we have these two things, this American dream and then this dream deferred that Langston Hughes, the Harlem Renaissance poet, spoke about.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at what we're doing when we talk about believing you money and equity, and I think we're investing in folks' dreams. More than just calling it a business or entrepreneurship, what I'm really interested in, what I think really changes the tempo of what we're doing is I am doing what should have happened all along, is noticing talented people,
Mm-hmm.
noticing and believing in them and their innovation, believing that what they have to offer is what we need in the world. I may need that business idea that you're holding on to. That might be the game changer for everything we're facing right now. But that I believe it can come from a Black body. I
Yes.
believe that it can come from the body of a woman. I
Mm-hmm.
believe that it can come from somebody, it's like coming from a Selma or from a Pritchard, Alabama. I believe in that. I believe in that so much that I'm going to go and raise the money and make that money available over and over and over again so that we can get a shot. But I believe in restoring what's been taken from us. And part of that is making us feel as if our dreams don't matter, and that what we see in the world and that vision and that light inside of us, that doesn't matter. But I know who I am and whose I am, and I know that God-given energy and light matters in the world. And so my job is to just open that door up, to open it up, let that beauty that we have really flourish, and um yeah, that's what really comes up for me when I'm thinking about believing you money, and what changes for us. I think that there's a part of us that you mentioned, that rest. There's a part of
Yeah.
us where our shoulders relax, our heart, stops racing. That constant fear that we can be disposed and displaced starts to leave us. And when you stop being in fear, when you have a moment where you can feel like I can catch my breath a little bit, where you feel like I got network, I got support. Everything ain't going to be perfect in this world because there's always going to be something to mourn and to grieve. There's always going to be a closing of a chapter, whether it's a romantic relationship, a family relationship, a work relationship. There's always going to be these nuances of things going on. But I feel like I have the ability, with the people around me, with the support, with the resources, to navigate those things. I think that we have at that point a community that sees itself as valued,
Mm-hmm.
as valuable, as worthy. When we start to know our worthiness, then everything around us starts to change. I start talking differently. I start wanting to associate differently. I start building not on the condition of what somebody else thinks of me, but what I know God says I am. I change in my perspective everything around me, and that changes generationally after generation after generation. One time that the money that I'm putting into folks right now, when we did the universal basic income payment, and at this time when we did the payments, it started off in the month of May. So I feel like we knew the pandemic was up and running. April, we started calling people, and then by the end of April, beginning first week of May, we had a conversation with all of our portfolio of companies that we were going to send these payments. And one of the guys who is in the portfolio, I'll never forget this, because I'm never expecting a man to, this guy don't break for nothing. And he started crying on that call and said, "You've done more for me my
Mm,
family, my business, and my community than the US government. And at that point in time, we had, because there
mm,
was no PPP yet or any of those things. It was just some Black girls believing in each other and believing in them that pushed for it. And I cried and everybody cried. I had to turn the camera off. Everybody was just like the ugly cry, the old ugly cry,
yes,
like I was ugly crying all over the place. But that's what we can do for each other.
yeah.
And that he felt that, and my team felt that I feel that and talk about that today. My whole body and ecology is changed,
Mm,
where I know that we have the power. It's not a guess. I'm
yeah.
ramping up to how when we can really feel it everywhere. But I know we have the power and the ability to change everything for ourselves with believing you money for sure.
So I'm excited to hear that, because when I think about the impact that the lack of investment, right, that Selma has experienced,
Yeah.
Pritchard and Selma are like first cousins.
Yeah.
Um, and so Selma, in many ways, and again, I appreciate the thoughtfulness with which you pen your book, Believe in You Money, because you talk about the historical context.
Yeah.
And when I think about the historical punishment, right, the systems that literally went to work to punish our community.
Yeah.
Selma, for those of you out who are tuned in and you're not based in our community or don't know the history of our community, because there are folks who live here who don't know the history of our community.
Yeah.
We played a major role in the voting rights movement. People come from all around the world to stand on the bridge where our foot soldiers stood in the face of law enforcement on March 7th, 1965. And so much of what we see that our community does not have stems from this systemic, and we were talking about this prior to going live as well, the things that even government has done,
Yeah.
with building interstates, right, and just crashing straight through, plowing straight through neighborhoods. We see that reflected in Montgomery, which is only 50 miles from Selma.
Yeah.
We see the fact that 85 was cut off right in Montgomery, and you have to take 80 to get into Selma and not have an interstate, which cuts off money,
Yeah.
right? So for folks who are trying to connect the dots between interstate, the interstate creates money, that creates revenue, because you have more people traveling from all across the country and all around the world on these major highways. Then, okay, yes, we have Highway 80, we have the Alabama River, we have the railroad, we do have advantages. We also had something called Craig Field, which was an Air Force base that was based here. But after the voting rights movement, it was then moved,
That's
right, which took away dollars from the families that had established here, the soldiers who were spending money here. And so, in many ways, the idea of scarcity, which you talk about in your book, it hits Selma in a way unlike any other place. It's plantation-esque, right? Like,
yeah.
because there are folks who, once you make it to a certain point, feel like, oh well, I've made it, I've arrived, and regardless of your skin tone, you don't try to reach back,
Right.
right, to help other folks. There are just so many dynamics, so many things that have caused this decline, if you will, of a very historic community that gave to the world,
Yeah.
right? Corporate America has just simply not chosen to invest in our community.
Yeah.
What could Selma look like if we believed in us enough, right?
Yeah.
If we had that reparative investment, what could Selma, or even what could Pritchard look like,
Yeah.
if we had that reparative investment?
It's a great question. I'm here in Pritchard, and Pritchard also has Africa Town. I don't know if you're
Yes.
familiar with the story of Africa Town, where the last known slave ship, the
Clotilda.
Clotilda, is found there. And it's been interesting to watch, much like Selma, where you have international acclaim to a
Mhm.
particular place, but you don't see the translation of that in an economic, viability and so forth. And so we see, people talking about Africa Town, and what are we going to do, and all of these different questions. I also know the way where um, there is a particular point where there are some folks who financially benefit from keeping certain communities in the margins.
Mm-hmm.
They, and the easiest way to say it is they take your data points and write grants for it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see it, but they, are saying
Mm-hmm.
this is our geographic area and this is this and that. Um, there those things are happening. So I want to level set it and say that what happens for a Selma and for a Pritchard when we get this kind of believe in you money investment? How do we even get to that? The first place I believe you go is you've got to be willing to define for yourself who you are. I see a lot of communities, and Africa Town, Pritchard in particular, is one of those places where you can talk about all the things that have gone wrong, the interstate going through the
Right.
area,
Mm-hmm.
the continuous exploitation to this day of the data and community. There's no transportation system anymore. The neighboring,
Mm-hmm.
like so many things have happened. But what I say to them is the first thing you don't do is you don't let dominant narrative folk, right, define who you are and who your leadership is and what your story is going to be. It has to authentically be who you say you are. And so, what I mean by that is a place like a Pritchard is still trying to play inside of the rules set by a more dominant, mainstream, white centric
Mm-hmm.
idea of what success and possibility and innovation looks like, but it's not authentically coming from who we say we are. Because when we start saying who we are, they'll be like, no, 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 you can't be that big now. That ain't for you. That's that.
Mm-hmm.
You all right? This is a transportation hub and area. We say we want to be known for climate transportation, and
Right.
they're like, y'all can't be climate transportation. That's y'all a black area. Y'all can't. That's not for you. That we do that over here.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to be willing to define for yourself and never let anybody else tell you who you are and again whose you are. You got to cut that off from the very beginning and set the table. A lot of what believing you money is about and the principles I'm giving is about boundaries. It's about letting
Mm-hmm.
folks know who you are and whose you are and what you want and what you expect and what you're going to deal with and what you're not going to deal with. And to be able to do that from a financial conversation. It's a two-way street. You want to do business with me, then I should be able to say, well, will it look like this? And this is what I mean it needed to look like. You can give the people the book and say, I need it to look like this and feel like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe that when we have this money, we have defined for ourselves who we are. We have a narrative that's not linked to the dominant cultural narrative, but it's linked to authentically us and seeing us in our brilliance.
Mm-hmm.
We have framework, boundaries that help us to navigate our expectations of partnership and relationship with other people. And so we help keep each other safe when we have those particular boundaries set up. And I think at that point, we are in a position in those communities to move it forward, by saying, here's what I want. Here's a vision I have, and this vision is about me. It's not about playing into whatever dominant cultural thing is going on. This is about who I see I am and what we think we are. And this is how I expect you to show up. I think, and it looks like for a Selma, nobody should come to Selma for a 60th anniversary without a commitment to your economic prosperity.
Amen.
Like they got to get permits, they got to talk to you and collaborate with you to get in there. It should be the baseline of the conversation, not an after point. The point begins with this is who we are and what we want it to look like, and this is our expectation.
I love it.
Same
I,
thing for Africa Town. It's
mm-hmm.
like yes, I think, yes, I can appreciate that you want to talk about the story or you care about these particular things.
Mhm.
However, we're not going to just be selling a story for a flash in the night or for a photo op or whatever it is. Our expectation is that we want to reclaim our own relationship to trade and commerce. We don't want the story to be we were trafficked and sold for goods. We
Right.
want the story to be, and today we run that port and we transfer goods and services to other communities. That's who we see ourselves as. You don't tell us who we are, we tell you who we are. And then we tell you how we want you to show up. And then we say, this is how the table needs to be set. Our expectation is if you want a partner, you want to collaborate, that's what it looks like. And that these are the people who are locally, because it can get plantationy. But the people who are here, you ain't my only people.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Somebody asked me the other day, well, you doing this? We're building a big building down in Pritchard and Africatown area and doing all these things. And somebody said, well, you doing all of these things, but you didn't ask anybody for any permission. I said, what do I have to ask you for permission when I have my own money? I want you to treat me like you treat some of these other folks that you let into your community and never ask them a question about what they're doing. I want you to do that for me. Since
Mm-hmm.
you so easily can give your power away to them, but you want to question what I'm trying to do when I'm a native and from this area or whatever. No, 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 no. So we have to treat people, you have to teach people how to treat you. And we're in that season right now in our community as well. But for Selma, I believe what would be different is why would anybody come to Selma? I've been coming to Selma. I was there for the 50th. That was around the time when Barack Obama came
Mm-hmm.
and the Selma movie with Oprah Winfrey and all of that season of things with Ava DuVernay. Years before that, I was coming. I've been coming to Selma for a long time, and I'll never forget that 50th anniversary. I was so heartbroken because everything still looked exactly like it did right
Mm-hmm.
after the whole world converged. You had a black president. John Lewis was still living. You had all of the parts. You had the old SNCC, the new SNCC, all of the people. And still, I didn't see an economic viability and movement outside of that. And I thought to myself, I know the people who are in Selma. These are smart, caring, charismatic. Not, some people be up and down, but the body of people that I mostly know are
Right.
great. And saying I don't want to oversell it. Y'all know, y'all folks.
Right.
But people that I know are incredible and cool and thoughtful and loving. And I'm like, what's going on? We have to grow in our maturity,
Mm-hmm.
I think, in understanding that we don't pull up a seat at the table. This is the table here. This is the table. Selma is the table. It is
Mm-hmm.
not looking for a seat or permission. It's a table already set. And the expectation is this is where we are right now. In 5 years or next 10 years, I expect it to look wholly different. You
Yeah.
can't take me from 50 years to now 60 years, 10 years have passed, and it looks exactly the same. It's a problem.
Absolutely. Listen, it is a problem, and there
That's
are
when you have
solutions.
that many brilliant, connected people coming. Every community does not have what Selma has to be able to attract that many people who have the ability to do something.
You are absolutely right.
Yeah.
We have literally one of the things in that same moment for the 50th that I was deeply disappointed in was one of our huge places here.
Yeah.
Um, I was in a meeting and they said, "Well, what are we going to do during Jubilee?" And I'm like, "It's February. Jubilee is next month. What are you talking about?"
That's what I'm saying. Like, how? How?
Yeah.
How, Sway?
Yeah.
How you got all these? This should be the most strategic moment of your life.
Yes.
You should know and be using this as a way of building power and relationship
Yes.
internationally. You could have so many international investors at your doorstep flying in because you invited them to Jubilee and invited it. Easy. If I had it, I'd be working it.
Yes, listen. And so, and I do believe, I am a strong believer that everything happens for a reason,
Yeah,
right? And so paths have crossed. We are
absolutely.
in a space where Selma is going to be better.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're all, like I said, we're growing in our maturity around
Yeah.
those things because we are still, some of the facts and things that I talk about in the book, one of the
Mhm.
reasons that I put some of these stories and narratives in there is to level set about what time frame we're in. My parents were in segregated schools. My parents were in a Jim Crow South where they couldn't do the jobs that they wanted to really do. That's only one generation. So I'm just the next group who went to school and studied and learned from them and started realizing, like, oh, we maybe need to switch it up here because this is going. So we have to give ourselves grace and compassion. What I am saying about Africa Town, Pritchard, Selma is not a slight but an opportunity for
Absolutely.
us to recognize what we have that is ours, that is valuable, and how we use it to our highest best advantage for all of the people around us. Absolutely.
Amen. And I can't think of a better way
Yeah.
for us to wrap up our time together. I do truly want to say that you continue to inspire me.
Mhm.
And thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely.
For everyone who has been tuned in and watching, we want you to tag and share this video. This has been an impactful conversation around the racial wealth gap, talking about what reparative economics looks like. Let's get into it, y'all. Until next Wednesday for Wealth Building Wednesday. Oh, before I go, if you have not already, look. If you have not already, listen, I have sticky notes and book notes. Listen, pen marks and everything, because I'm telling you, it gives us a historical context as well as some things to do now. Like she said, believe in you money sets boundaries. It allows us to take on our own narrative, and that's exactly what we're going to have to do in our own respective communities, and then come together
That's that.
as a community.
Yeah.
Can't spell community without unity. So again, thank you, Miss Norwood, for joining me today, and thank you to everyone who's tuned in. Again, tag and share until next Wednesday. Y'all, please get out here, buy the book, okay, and then let's get out here and build some wealth.
Yes. Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye bye.